Hi, I am Solomon. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you caught the last episode. In this episode, I'm going to be discussing freehold titles versus leasehold certificates. What are those? What do they mean? Very simple. In Kenya, land exists under what you call ownership tenure. Tenure means length of ownership and structure of ownership. And those are basically either freehold or leasehold. Freehold means, and I've covered this in previous episodes if you want to go back to the archives on our YouTube channel and look into that. But freehold basically means absolute ownership. Actually, if you take a look at the image of the freehold title that's going to pop up on the screen, there's actually a section on the title deed that says absolute. And that means you have absolute ownership for perpetuity or forever. That's what it means. And it is free of any taxes to any government authority. You don't have to pay any annual rates or rents. You have absolute ownership for perpetuity. That's a really good thing, especially if you're buying for future purposes, if you're buying for retirement purposes, if you're doing it as a savings plan. As we have said before, we highly recommend that you have at least 25 to 30% of your cash savings removed from your bank and put into a piece of land somewhere. Hopefully somewhere that you like, somewhere that you can afford, and forget about it for a while. Historically speaking, land has outperformed every other asset class in Kenya since independence. So it's a prudent thing to have some of your savings in land holdings. And this is where freehold ownership and freehold titles come in very handy, because you can simply put the money away by buying the piece of land and forgetting about it for as long as necessary without worrying about paying annual taxes to any government authority or having someone challenge your ownership based on an expiration of time. Fairly simple, right? Now, in contrast to that, we have leasehold certificates. Although both are generally referred to as title deeds, there is a distinct difference even in their naming. Leasehold titles are referred to as certificates. One of the main reasons for that, I believe, is because these have an expiration date on them. Leasehold titles give you the right to occupy and use a piece of property according to the stipulated zoning restrictions, whether it's residential, commercial, that has to do with density of development, and also agricultural land, even though mostly held as freehold, can be held as leasehold. One of the key differences between the two as well is that freehold titles are solely and exclusively the preserve of Kenyan citizens. Leasehold titles can be owned by foreigners as well, and this is one of the reasons that they have a limit on the duration of ownership. Before the 2010 promulgation of the Constitution, leasehold titles had a time limit of as long as 999 years, if you can believe that, right? And this is something that colonial governments put in place before independence. That was normal back then, that was part of the legal structure, but at the 2010 promulgation of the Constitution, our leaders thought it best to limit these timeframes for obvious reasons. It's impractical to give someone use of land, especially large tracts of land, for 1,000 years, when we have a growing population of local Kenyans, many of whom may not own any property, right? So now they are limited to a maximum of 99 years, which makes more sense. In places like Nairobi, this can be as low as 50 years. And that's the main difference between the two. Freehold land ownership documents are referred to as freehold titles. Leasehold property have ownership documents referred to as leasehold certificates. I hope that helps. If you have any questions, as I've said before, send us your emails, but preferably reach out to a licensed advocate of the High Court of Kenya who can give you very specific and detailed information on the two. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Make sure you share widely. We're always happy to engage with you in that way. You're watching Online in Kenya. I am Solomon Wangwe. Stay tuned for more information on strategic land investment.